Egg.
Brought to you by Enron.
Recently, a company called Enron has announced one of the worst inventions imaginable. You know how Homer Simpson used to work at a nuclear power plant and then he went home to his family every day? What if he could bring that nuclear power plant into his home? That's exactly what Enron thought by creating the Enron Egg, or simply just known as the Egg. This is a nuclear reactor that you have inside of your home to generate power. I just noticed I've got the chroma key on behind me, which is making like everything green vanish. It's almost like there is like nuclear fission going on behind me talking about this. Now, this seems like a really bad move for everyone. And if you look at the logo for Enron, you've probably drawn some comparisons to E-Corp from Mr. Robot. Now, Enron is a company that went through a huge scandal back in the early 2000s. And then in 2020, they gave up their trademark name and it was bought for $275. That's not a billion or a million. They bought an entire company's trademark for $275. And now the people that own Enron are basically just using this huge company name to elaborately shitpost.
Hey, what the f is out of raw? I keep seeing this bullshit every fucking.
So instead of letting this company die a slow and natural death, people basically quick revived it and used it to make memes about it. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the company Enron, it might have been before your time. You were too busy playing, you know, maybe you were a Fortnite Season 5 kid. But their downfall and scandal is referred to as one of the biggest scams in US history. Not only was it one of the biggest bankruptcy filings in the entirety of America, but it also sparked legislation often used today so the exact same thing doesn't happen again. Now, Enron was founded by Kenneth Lay, not to be confused with Lay's crisps. I do want to know, by the way, why they're called Lays in America. UK, a normal country, we call them Walkers. Now, Kenneth Lay merged two American gas companies together, Houston Natural Gas Corporation and Internorth, and that was all the way back in 1985. And then after merging those two companies, he renamed them to Enron. Can I just say, by the way, that Enron sounds like one of the most evil companies imaginable? Seriously, it sounds like Arasaka from Cyberpunk or something. And by the following year, Enron was already in its first big oopsie, that being the Valhalla scandal. Essentially, two oil traders located in Valhalla, New York, were making some unauthorized trades and set $3 million aside for themselves and created two books. Now, obviously, these books are used to keep track of money going in, money going out of companies that are so enormous, but they purposely manipulated the books to make it look like they didn't just pocket $3 million for themselves. And once this was brought to Lay's attention, what did he think to do? Fire them? Fire them for stealing from the company as he should? No. Instead of firing them, he actually ended up rewarding them by increasing their trade limits. This is the most Disney villain tier punishment I can ever think of. You act a little bit evil? Here you go. Now you can even be more evil. Now, another interesting aspect of Enron was the mark-to-marketing accounting. And this started all the way in the 1990s. So to quickly boil it down, it essentially means that you as a company rely on future prices versus, you know, historical prices, leading to a company being able to decide their profits without accountability. If you didn't get any of that, no worries. You're watching the Slop channel. I didn't expect you to. It's totally fine. It basically means they're inflating their numbers to make it look pretty for investors. And as you know, I am someone that loves to talk about inflation. So what Enron started to do was hide their losses behind better investments, basically being like, oh, that 40 million we lost, that never happened, but we're going to make 40 million this year. The source? My ass. And then Enron would also take money from their SPVs, their special purpose vehicles, if they needed it. So basically leeching off their own companies to make their main company look okay. But by the early 2000s, all this bad karma caught up to Enron. On top of managing the energy aspect of their company, they also announced their broadband plan, the Enron broadband service. Oh my God, finally. It is time to end AOL dial-up. Now we've got Enron, guys. I don't know if you remember the curse of AOL dial-up. I don't know how that company is still going. As a kid, we had one family computer. I remember logging onto it and that AOL dial-up sound and then running the entire thing on like Windows XP. You had this amazing piece of technology shared by the family, and I would use it to play flash games. Like, for example, the Scooby-Doo flash game, which traumatized me as a child for having an absolutely horrific jump scare. On top of that as well, Enron tried to incorporate Blockbuster. Yeah, that's definitely a thing now. I think there's like one Blockbuster left in Alaska. And that's pretty much it. The worst thing is Blockbuster actually tried to be a streaming service before Netflix. And if they did that, they would have actually survived. Also, shout outs to all the old heads that remember early Netflix where you had to get like a disc in the mail and then you had to like send it back to them. Oh my God. Do you remember that before streaming? Oh. Now, this didn't work out for Enron because they lied. They lied a little bit. They lied again to beef up their numbers, saying that they had more value than they actually did. Problem is, you start a chain reaction because a lot of companies, they lie to investors. But when one investor looks a little bit too deep, there's a very high chance that he will go and snitch on his findings to every other investor, causing a mass cascade of everyone pulling out. And with a lot of companies, you're only as valuable as many investors you have. By February 2001, everything was collapsing so quickly that Lay, the CEO, stepped away from the company and was replaced by Jeffrey Skilling. Now, with the removal of Lay, Enron started to tank even more. Half of its stock price fell in basically a single day after this move. But with Lay leaving, a lot of the investors did as well, and their stock price went from $80 to $40 within 6 months. I'm sure you guys watching this video are very smart. I'm sure you know 9 plus 10 equals 21, but that basically means their company halved. And then following in August, Skilling left and Lay came back as the CEO. Oh boy! Our boy's back to run Enron into the ground, finally. And then by October, the company had announced its first quarter loss in 4 years, and then the SEC stepped in to investigate. That's a big yikes. You don't want the SEC to investigate you. So when the SEC did a little bit of digging, you know, they did the Cole Phelps looking in the trash bin, picking up the funny Red Dead Redemption hat. It turns out that Enron have been overstating their profits by $591 million between 97 and 2000. And then by the end of November, Enron's stock price plummeted even more, turning into around 26 cents a share. And then 2 days after Enron's stock plummeted, Enron filed for bankruptcy, which resulted in almost 30,000 probably honest employees losing their jobs and life savings. But despite that, Enron didn't actually get off scot-free. In 2002, the US enacted a new legislation, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which again sounds like a code word that you use in Plague Inc. or something. And it protects investors by making companies disclose more accurate and reliable findings. Essentially, this is the worst thing to ever happen to the Pyrocynical channel because you're no longer allowed to inflate your numbers to make the company look better than what it is. So by 2006, many executives like Lay and Skilling were eventually put on trial for crimes, totaling up to 39 counts of conspiracy and fraud against them. Skilling went on to serve his sentence and he was actually released in 2019. And Lay, unfortunately, played Five Nights at Freddy's, had a heart attack and died, passing away before his sentencing was processed. He did actually have a heart attack, by the way. I don't know how accurate the Five Nights at Freddy's bit is. And by 2008, investors were successfully able to win their settlements between various banks that did business with Enron. So just to show how bad the damage was, investors ended up receiving around $7.2 billion. And that is pretty much the whole story of Enron until recently and this whole egg situation. So back in early December last year, Enron seemingly rose from the dead. Someone used a quick revive and they actually came back from the dead on the 23rd anniversary of when they filed for bankruptcy. That was December the 2nd, 2001. And this oddly timed revival also came with an announcement saying that the company simply wanted to talk, which is the equivalent of HR just wanting to talk before they gun you down in the office. Looking further into their press release, which is pretty lengthy, there's a specific clause that screams red flag for crypto scams, using the words permissionless innovation, and especially that decentralized technology is advancing. So yeah, this is like the 30 billionth time where a company's been hijacked and they've turned it into a crypto bit. But again, like reading through it, most of this is just holy buzzwords. Like someone at the Enron office clearly got a thesaurus for Christmas because they're just spouting out words that you would never use in a conversation. But if you do a little bit more digging and go into their terms of service, they are kind of alluding to the company being a parody, only being created for entertainment purposes. So is this an actual parody account that someone bought, almost like a Twitter gimmick account, but a multi-billion-dollar energy company? Or are they trying to hide something more evil? But the parody aspect seems to make a little bit more sense because when you look into it, Enron was actually bought by something called the College Company for around $275. I'm sure they've got no association to college humor that plagued my YouTube recommended when I was a teenager. And the co-founders of that company are Connor Gaydos, that's definitely a surname, holy, and Peter McKindo. Gaydos. Wow, that's I would get my surname changed. Now, Peter's name might ring a bell to you because he was one of the people to start the Birds Aren't Real mock conspiracy theory project. And the crypto coin was actually something that the Twitter account originally alluded to. But then the post was promptly taken down and there was no follow-up talking about it. Now, there were other signs of this being a parody as well. For example, they released merch, which included a $118 hoodie. Now, I get it. YouTube merch is a scam. We charge way too much. I get that. We're all very greedy. But $118 for a hoodie? On top of that as well, there was a section of the website talking about possible careers that you could have at the company. However, many of the employee photos, if you reverse search them, end up being stock images that they stole from the internet. To which Enron defended their stock photo employee, Malik, by saying that he had a successful modeling career while working at Enron. A few days later, they made a couple posts talking about one of their CEOs, Connor Gaydos. That's such a bad name. Which, if you recall earlier, that name, Gaydos, the entire parody pipeline for Enron keeps making more and more sense as time goes on. Especially a few days later when there was a video of Connor Gaydos being attacked with a pie to the face.
Connor! Everyone's back! Connor! Oh my god!
And apparently as well, that pieing incident has very deep connotations because it was a reference to when Jeffrey Skiing, the old CEO of Enron, was actually pied in the face by a random woman all the way back in June 2001. So as 2024 was nearing its end, a year of the Rizzler, Big Justice, and that's pretty much it. I think you had the Wicked film where both of the main characters look like they eat a loaf of bread once a month. But Enron announced its first new product in well over 20 years. And this was going to be announced on January the 6th, aka the same day of the 4th anniversary of the January 6th insurrection at the United States Capitol. Now, in anticipation for this big new product, Enron put out a bunch of tweets saying they will change this country forever and they're taking back the country. Similar to how people at the insurrection were probably saying the exact same thing on Twitter. Now, after these tweets, they would briefly retract their statements, including one of the instances promoting their job posting for a social media manager.
We're sorry.
I'm assuming whoever made these posts were briefly fired. But then everything led up to this moment. The announcement of the Enron egg. So what is the egg exactly? It is the world's first at-home nuclear reactor. And it can power your home in its entirety for over 10 years. Now, there are some very notable aspects here. Like, for example, the Enron egg being encased in a heat-resistant casing. That's, of course, to withstand extreme temperatures. A water pump as well to ensure that the coolant doesn't overheat. There's also a built-in microchip TV showing Enron's oversight on the egg's performance. And we can't forget as well about the uranium zirconium hydride. These are fuel rods that help generate heat for the egg. But don't worry, it's not radioactive because they claim at Enron that it is only 20% enriched uranium, meaning it should hopefully not create a nuclear disaster at your home.
Only certified Enron engineers have access to the internals of the egg, which only uses 20% enriched uranium. This is far too low to make an atomic weapon.
It also claims to be incredibly more affordable than other energy options. Now, at the minute, you can actually try to buy the egg. You can add it to your email pre-order, which I'm sure they'll contact you back in the year 2080 when this stuff is actually legal to be in someone's home. Now, as much as this probably is a joke, it is a parody. I don't care. I'm adding my name to the email list because I want a chance to get that nuclear reactor egg. Now, I really do hope that Enron stay as this kind of like weird parody company. I mean, it's a company that is so hated that Mr. Robot's creator actually used the logo as E Corp, the big evil company in that universe. That's because Enron has had such a diabolical impact on American culture. But I really do hope that they stay as a parody company and they don't go down the crypto shitcoin timeline because that's just so boring. I'm so bored of that ending. If anything, this reminds me of when that parody news site, The Onion, actually tried to put a bid in to buy InfoWars when they were filing for bankruptcy. Unfortunately, a judge said no and kind of overturned that. But yeah, the egg situation is truly insane.